Chapter 21 Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. Being said in such a way by wordless Summer, Lonely Snow did not give any rebuttals. He only lowered his head and left, chasing after Shifang. Waving slowly squinted his eyes. When he thought about Shifang equipped in a body of trash equipment, he could not understand what methods Shifang had used to cause Lonely Snow to follow him. Lonely Snow had even given up on the clearing deathly forest. Boss, let's ignore that foolish Lonely Snow. At worst, we'll start looking for people again. There are plenty of level 2 players now. Battle to the end, said in disdain as he watched Lonely Snow. Waving slowly nodded his head. Lonely Snow's leaving did not cause any loss to their party. As for Shifang creating a party to dive into the deathly forest, not to mention clearing the dungeon, nobody would go in with a level 1 player. In front of the deathly forest's entrance, Shifang and Blackie continuously shouted to recruit people. Open party for deathly forest, no rigid requirements, okay as long as you're a veteran gamer. 2 waiting for 4. Shifang shouted. When everyone heard of it, many level 2 players had run over. It was because Shifang's requirements were very low. Many small parties would choose people based on equipment quality, they needed a few pieces of common equipment to pass. However, who would have that many pieces of common equipment in the early periods of the game? Party me, I'm already a level 2 cleric. Party me, I'm a level 2 shield warrior. I also have a piece of level 1 common plate armor arm guard. In just a moment, Shifang had invited 4 people. These 4 people were quite happy originally. There were over 10 people currently present, but only they were chosen. However, after they saw the party leader, Shifang's level, they left the party in rage one after another. Fuck, it's just a noob coming to die in the deathly forest at level 1. If you want to enter the dungeon, enter it by yourself. I won't accompany you. No wonder there are no requirements for the party. Want us to give you a ride? Not a chance. The 4 people were extremely enraged, and the voices they made were practically roars. Every player at the deathly forest could hear it. Hee, even a level 1 player dares boast about entering the deathly forest. He just wants to tag along for experience and equipment. Lucky for me I didn't go over. There are all sorts of birds in a large forest. Who would be foolish enough to enter the dungeon with a level 1 noob? Isn't that just looking to be abused? One after another, the level 2 players laughed at Shifang for overestimating himself and for his foolishness. Get lost if you don't wish to party up. We're not begging you all to come. Blackie became enraged after listening to them. Shifang's techniques had long since convinced him, yet these people were calling Shifang a noob. Can a noob kill a level 2 rare elite when he was level 2? Can a noob kill a level 5 chieftain when he was level 0? These people were just a group of snobs and idiots. Crap, my knowledge has been widened. A level 1 noob party can be awesome. I really want to see how you two gather a full party. The cleric that just left the party said with a cold smile. At this moment, Lonely Snow ran over. When he saw Shifang, he hurriedly said, Brother expert, give me an invite. I want to enter the deathly forest together with you guys. I have 2 pieces of common plate armor equipment on me, defenses 24. Alright, Shifang immediately sent an invitation. Blackie never imagined that Lonely Snow would actually leave his original party and come to them. He suddenly had a good impression of Lonely Snow. Blackie clapped Lonely Snow's shoulders, heartily laughing, you have good eyes. Don't worry, following Brother Feng definitely won't be a mistake. Nonsense. Lonely Snow was still slightly worried within his heart. The grinding spot Shifang had simply pointed him to had allowed him to rise to level 2 quickly. However, Shifang himself hadn't even reached level 2, and he was still wearing very poor equipment. Lonely Snow just couldn't understand how it could be so. The spectating players by the side all became dumbfounded. There was actually someone who would enter the dungeon with a level 1 noob. This person had good equipment, at that. The brand new plate armor and boots on Lonely Snow must definitely be common equipment and not trash equipment. Although Lonely Snow had joined the party, not a single player had joined them after Shifang had recruited for over 10 minutes. With just 3 of them alone, it was impossible to enter and clear the dungeon. At this moment, waving slowly but surely brought a group of people. Brother, expert, still hasn't partied anybody. We've already invited another 3 strong members. All of them have at least 2 or 3 pieces of level 1 common equipment. The cleric, Endless Summer Night, said to Shifang in ridicule. Waving slowly only sent a glance towards Shifang, then moved his sight towards Lonely Snow, saying, you won't have a future if you follow him around. Before we enter the dungeon, you could still consider it over properly. I guarantee that you definitely won't suffer a loss. Afterward, Waving slowly shifted his gaze towards Blackie. Previously, all his attention had been on Shifang, having ignored Blackie. Now that he took a closer look, Blackie's clothing looked brand new. Blackie was even holding a blackwood staff. His equipment should be quite good, and he was also level 2, so his techniques should be good as well. You're not bad as well. Why don't you join our party? You should know that we are an elite party. It's not something average players could compare to. If we're together, leveling, grinding, and dungeon diving will be easy. Waving slowly looked at Blackie with a smile. Get lost, trying to poach me over just based on your little party. Blackie scolded as he pointed his blackwood staff at Waving slowly. At the same time, he had selected to display the halo effect of the bronze equipment, saying, it's just 2 to 3 pieces of common equipment. I have 3 bronze equipment and 2 common equipment. Waving slowly and the others were shocked. They never thought Blackie was that powerful. He actually possessed 3 pieces of bronze equipment. During this period of time, a person having 2 to 3 pieces of common equipment was considered an expert. As for having a piece of bronze equipment, that person would definitely be an expert. Every guild would fight over for that person. However, the Blackie before them actually had 3 pieces of bronze equipment. Waving slowly's party also became surprised. When they saw the halo effect of the bronze equipment, their eyes had nearly popped out of their sockets. No wonder Shifang behaved that boldly. Shifang had nothing to fear because he had grabbed an expert's favor. Meanwhile, Lonely Snow who stood beside Blackie was slack-jawed. He looked at Blackie in disbelief. Lonely Snow had originally thought of Shifang as a rarely seen expert. He had never imagined that Blackie was the true great expert. Fellow brother, if you party up with such a noob and enter the dungeon, it would also be a burden on you. Not to mention failing to clear the dungeon, you might even have to die once. How about you come with us? All pieces of mage equipment from the dungeon are free for you to choose from. Although Waving slowly was enraged for being given such a slap, if he could rope over Blackie, then the chances for clearing the dungeon would become a lot greater. I agree with your views. Joining a group of noobs such as yourselves really will be a burden to me, Blackie chuckled. You, Waving slowly's face turned beet red, furiously saying, then let's see who clears the deathly forest first. Finishing his piece, Waving slowly spun around and left. He did not believe that a party with a noob in it could clear the deathly forest. Humph, he's just a powerful damage dealer entering the dungeon. Does he really think he could clear it? Wordless Summer jealously murmured. Right, we are all veteran gamers. We are definitely stronger in dungeon diving than they are, the shield warrior curled his lips. After Waving slowly's party left, the number of people applying for Shifang's party had also suddenly increased. Such an effect was mainly caused by the equipment that Blackie wore. At this period, bronze equipment was definitely the proof of an expert. Even if there was a noob as the party leader, an expert with 3 pieces of bronze equipment could be considered as strong as 2 people. The advantage of having such an expert was definitely greater than an average party. However, Shifang was no longer inviting people at random this time, there was a definite requirement. Such an action had caused the 4 players who had left Shifang's party previously to regret immensely. How could they have acted on impulse? Now, Shifang wouldn't give them a chance even if they wished to join. Just as Shifang was fervently recruiting party members. At the southwest part of the Deathly Forest dungeon's entrance, a great disturbance suddenly appeared. Many players had run over, one after another, every one of them having excited expressions. It can't be, meeting in such a place. Blackie's 2 eyes stared straight ahead. Shifang was also shocked. They could even meet such an important figure in a small location like Red Leaf Town. It was just unimaginable. Could it be that Red Leaf Town was a place that had crouching tigers and hidden dragons, only, Shifang had never discovered it before. Chapter 22 Recruitment Storm. As more players started going there, Shifang's area turned leisurely. Brother Fong, I'm not seeing things, right? Or am I dreaming right now? Blackie rubbed his eyes as he asked with uncertainty. Shifang was speechless. With a bitter smile, he looked towards the 3-man party that caused this disturbance. The newcomer was not just anybody, she was Blackie's idol, Goddess Gentle Snow. Gentle Snow's body was covered in a suit of gorgeous silver-colored plate armor, revealing her fine and curvaceous body. Adding to her angelic beauty and snow-cold temperament, even women's hearts would be moved by her, as well as a large group of men. Even Shifang couldn't help but admit that Gentle Snow was the most perfect woman he had seen before, be it regarding appearances, body, or temperament. There was not a single female celebrity who could match up to her. As for the 2 people on each side of Gentle Snow, Shifang was very familiar with them as well. He had seen them before on big news channels. They were all famous experts in God's domain. One of them was also an absolute beauty named Zhao Yueru. If Gentle Snow could be said to possess a perfect body and appearance, then Zhao Yueru possessed a devilishly enticing body and appearance. Every one of her movements was like a temptation that could influence a person's heart. Adding on the fiery red robe that she wore, her body radiated a wild-like charm. Such bewildering charms had caused many men wanting to go over and assault her. If you really did such a thing, however, then congratulations. You've just earned a one-way ticket directly to hell. This was because words such as big breasts, no brains and as delicate as a flower were not applicable to Zhao Yueru. In God's domain, she had another nickname of the Flame Witch. The reason why she held this title was that of the mountain of corpses she had piled up using these male players. There had once been a guild leader of a large guild that had tried assaulting Zhao Yueru. As a result, the guild that had over 100,000 players became no more. Zhao Yueru even hunted their guild leader. The incident only came to an end when that guild leader was killed back to level 0. From then on, the title of Flame Witch had been cast on Zhao Yueru. Compared to the Snow Goddess and Flame Witch, the priestess by their side could only be considered normal. She was not overly beautiful, her techniques were not bad, and she was also within the top 100 rankings of Star Moon Kingdom's priest leaderboard. 2 absolute beauties plus a great beauty, such a combination had created brilliant scenery in the Deathly Forest. Hundreds of players surrounded them, trying to become acquainted with the 3 women. Unfortunately, the 3 beauties did not even look at them. Sister Yueru, these people are really scary. How about we return and level up? The timid Xiao Yuei whispered. Hee, Yuei, don't be afraid. With Gentle Snow here, even if you give these hateful, vulgar men 10 times the courage, they wouldn't dare come over here, Zhao Yueru said with a smile, proudly sticking out her chest. Gentle Snow only nodded her head in reply. Regarding these salivating, vulgar men, she did not even place them in her eyes. Although the drops from elite monsters are not bad, the drop rate for skill books is higher at the Deathly Forest. If we don't grind for a few more skill books, we will level up very slowly in the future, Gentle Snow quietly said. Zhao Yueru nodded her head in agreement. Although the 3 of them had killed quite many elite monsters, the number of skill books that dropped was very little. Until now, the 3 of them had yet to learn even 3 skills. It was really affecting their strength utilization and grinding efficiency. Effective party for Deathly Forest, looking for a healer and MT, 3 waiting for 3. After taking a few looks, Shifang continued shouting. Although Gentle Snow and Zhao Yueru were indeed attractive, Shifang was no longer a child. He had seen plenty of beauties, especially after he became Shadow's captain, many beauties would willingly throw themselves at Shifang. As for Gentle Snow and Zhao Yueru, it was good enough to just look at them for pleasure. Such beauties were not something Shifang could have thoughts about. His main goal right now was to get down to business. However, Shifang's shouting did not yield any replies. Not a single player had even glanced at him. All of them were staring and salivating at Gentle Snow's group of 3. Even Blackie was no exception. His eyes had nearly popped out of their sockets from staring. Shifang sighed, helplessly shaking his head and continued shouting and recruiting people. Crap, what is this fool blabbering about? Do you really think anybody would commit suicide together with you in the dungeon? Quickly scram, you level 1 noob. Stop distracting me from looking at beauties. Quite a few players started to express their discontentment. Two high-quality beauties had already shown up, yet instead of trying to get closer to them, Shifang was actually making noise here. What would you do if those beauties were scared off? That person is interesting. He can actually attract the hostility of so many people. Did he do something immoral before? Xiao Yue revealed a crescent moon-like smile, giggling as she pointed at Shifang. Zhao Yueru aimed her eyes over as well. She felt nothing special from Shifang. He was even dressed in tattered clothing. Zhao Yueru felt that Shifang was just trying to seek attention from the crowd. She suddenly said in disdain, he is definitely doing so to grab our attention. Let's not bother with him and quickly party up 3 people to dive the dungeon. Regarding the number of men who had tried to attract their attention, there were just too many of them. Zhao Yueru had seen all kinds of methods these men had used before, and Shifang's method was not a rare sight at all, but instead outdated. Gentle Snow did not voice out any opinions, only taking a look at Shifang. She felt an odd feeling coming from Shifang. This was the spirit of a hidden sword. Gentle Snow was especially concerned about the fire poker hanging around Shifang's waist. Gentle Snow, what happened to you? Zhao Yueru curiously looked at Gentle Snow. She did not understand why Gentle Snow would keep staring at the extremely ordinary Shifang. It's nothing. Maybe it's just my imagination. We should hurry up and recruit some people to dive the dungeon. Gentle Snow shook her head, no longer looking at the fire poker at Shifang's waist. Originally, Shifang's party already had trouble recruiting for people. However, because of Zhao Yueru's single sentence, nobody else had paid attention to Shifang's party, even if his party had an expert present. Shifang expressed his helplessness when seeing the hundreds of players queuing up in front of Zhao Yueru. The 3 women's arrival had really bad timing. Brother Fang, why don't we go over there as well? Blackie shamelessly suggested. Scram, what do you take me for? Shifang rolled his eyes at Blackie. This fellow was just too shameless, forgetting friendship after finding love. Instead, Lonely Snow was the better one. He was a truly honest man. In the beginning, Lonely Snow had only taken a few glances but stopped after giving out a few praises. He had even helped Shifang in recruiting people by his side. Blackie did not dare to speak again after being scolded by Shifang. He could only silently look on in envy at those players in the queue. Over 10 minutes later, Shifang still had not recruited a single person. Similarly, Gentle Snow's party had also not recruited a single person. However, in Shifang's case, it was because nobody had come to join his party. Whereas for Gentle Snow's party, it was because the players that wanted to join did not match up to their specifications. One party was in heaven, while the other was on earth. Shifang had no more choices. He could not just continue dragging on in such a way, his time was precious. He could only make exceptions in recruiting. Efficient party for Deathly Forest, we have an expert leading the party, clear in 1 try, no limit to levels, looking for healers and damage dealers, 3 waiting for 3. However, Shifang's words had caused many players to send over looks of disdain. Even if you were trying to attract attention, you should have a lower line. Currently, there had already been tens of level 2 players who had died out of the dungeon. Every one of them had said the Deathly Forest was impossible to clear. On the other hand, Shifang said his party had no level limits. Then wasn't he trying to say that he only needed 1 person to clear the Deathly Forest? Was this possible? However, Shifang's lower line had still attracted some players' attention. Within a few moments, a group of level 1 players had come running over to join. Chapter 23 Tyrant Bear. Tens of level 1 players came running over. The area in front of Shifang's party had also started becoming lively. This person is really something. He is so desperate to enter the dungeon that he would even want level 1 noobs. Did he not know that there has already been a level 2 elite party that had returned after dying? Who cares about him? A noob is a noob after all. We won't be able to understand their thoughts. The long queue of level 2 players started laughing one after another at Shifang's actions. They all wanted to watch Shifang become a joke. Those guys are really interesting. Even I don't have much confidence in clearing the Deathly Forest, yet they actually want to clear it with a group of level 1 players. Zhao Yueru's lips curled up slightly, revealing an exuberant smile as she looked in Shifang's direction. Her voice carried a hint of ridicule and disdain. Gentle Snow also sent a glance towards Shifang from a distance. Shifang's temperament was both calm and confident. He did not become angry from being laughed at. Every one of his movements was very mature, not much different from the experts in God's domain she had seen before. However, she did not understand from where Shifang's confidence came. Deathly Forest was Red Leaf Town's first dungeon, and it was also everyone's first time being in touch with a dungeon in God's domain. Their difficulties were an unknown. Even the elite parties of guilds would carefully choose their members before entering the dungeon. On the other hand, Shifang did not care in the slightest, as if just gathering 6 players was good enough. Maybe I'm just overthinking things. He's just a level 1 player, so how could he clear the Deathly Forest? Gentle Snow caressed her elegant hair, her heart no longer thinking about Shifang's odd actions. She looked at her hand, at the player information displayed on it. Level 2 Summoner, Magic Attack 28, HP 150, Defense 8, Movement Speed 4. Fail, next. Afterward, another Cursemancer stepped forward. The person tensely sent his own attributes to the Snow Goddess, Gentle Snow. On the other side, Shifang as well was looking at player data. Although he did not have a lower line, he did have a bottom line. The equipment and levels of these level 1 players were much worse than the level 2 players that Gentle Snow's party were recruiting. However, they were still players. As long as they did not simply add their 8 free attribute points early on, the chance of clearing the Deathly Forest with a 6-man party was very high. As for those shield warriors and guardian knights who solely added strength or weapons job but did not add agility, all of them were rejected. Big brother, please party me. Although I am just a level 1 guardian knight, I have a piece of level 0 common equipment. Also, all 8 of my attribute points are still available. I can completely add them based on your requirements. A youth named Kola pleaded, his eyes filled with expectations. Shifang was slightly surprised. A guardian knight that did not add any attribute points could actually reach level 1. It was a masterpiece. It had to be known that guardian knights had very low attack, making the killing of monsters difficult. Normally, they would party up to kill monsters. To increase grinding efficiency, they would add a few points of strength. Otherwise, leveling up would be too slow. Guardian Knight Cola, Cola, Cola. When Shifang looked at Cola's face, and also his tall and muscular body, he felt that it was somewhat familiar. Suddenly, he entered into deep thought. His memory seemed to have such a person in it. That's right, it's Tyrant Bear. Shifang managed to remember it. Tyrant Bear's name was Cola. Tyrant Bear was the core MT of the first-rate guild, Brilliant Stars. During the early periods of God's Domain, Tyrant Bear was constantly unsuccessful. He was even kicked out by third-rate guild, Heaven's Crown. After entering Brilliant Stars, Cola suddenly started to shine. He turned from being a normal party's MT into the core elite party's MT in the guild. He was ranked 15th on the Guardian Knight leaderboard of Star Moon Kingdom. Cola was known for both being able to attack and defend. Shifang had never thought that the Tyrant Bear would run up to him on his own. Cola was such a shy person, as well. It was totally different from the Tyrant Bear of 10 years later. Suddenly, Shifang had an idea. Currently, the Tyrant Bear had yet to join Heaven's Crown, not to mention Brilliant Stars. If Shifang could poach Cola over and turn Cola into his own MT, then wouldn't dungeon diving in the future be a lot easier? Big brother, I guarantee that I will absolutely listen to your commands when inside the dungeon. Please consider it over. Cola's tone carried hints of begging. Shifang had nearly let loose a laugh. The great Tyrant Bear would actually speak in such whispered tones just for a position in the dungeon. However, Shifang still held it in. The level 1 players that had come here all held hopes of getting lucky. The other parties that entered the Deathly Forest with level 2 players were already no good, not to mention level 1 players like them. If they could enter once into the Deathly Forest and fortunately obtain 1 or 2 pieces of equipment, then it would be of great help to their future development. At that time, entering into a large guild would become much easier. Alright, I can add you in. Shifang's face turned grave as he said, however, you should know that bringing a level 1 noob like you into the Deathly Forest isn't easy. I can't just carry you through the Deathly Forest, and then after you get equipment, you join some other elite parties. Wouldn't I just be striving for nothing? When Shifang finished his speech, quite a few level 1 players had suddenly sent over looks of disdain. Weren't you also a level 1 noob? However, Shifang did not care about what these people felt. He continued saying, I wish to form a stable party. Even if we need members, it would be with stability as the priority. If you wish to enter the dungeon, you need to be prepared for the long term. When I call you for dungeon diving, you must come. You cannot reject because you have some other matters. So, what will be your choice? When the other players heard Shifang saying so, they suddenly turned quiet. Shifang's intentions were very clear. If you wish to enter the party, then you won't be able to join other parties in the future, not to mention joining a guild. Everybody knew that entering a guild was the best method to increase your own strength quickly. Currently, they did not have the qualifications to join any of those guilds. So, they were here to try their luck, hoping to obtain 1 or 2 pieces of equipment. They might even be able to join those guilds afterward. So, how would they be able to give up their chances of entering a good guild just to enter a dungeon? Cola had also never imagined that Shifang would give such a demand. However, it was still reasonable. You couldn't just expect other people to bring you up, then leave when you become strong. However, Shifang lacked the persuasiveness when he said these words. At this moment, Blackie stood out and furiously said, just looking at you noobs, there is nobody that would want you down in the dungeon. And you still wish to join a guild in the future and enjoy their benefits. Are you thinking yourselves as experts, or are you taking us for idiots? Cola thought what Blackie, the expert, had said made sense. Even a level 2 expert with 3 pieces of bronze equipment was in this party, whereas Cola himself was just a novice noob. So, what right did he have to complain? Many thanks for Big Brother Expert's pointers. Little brother will definitely strive to fulfill his own role. Cola continuously thanked Blackie. Blackie felt somewhat uneasy from being thanked and referred to as an expert by Cola. Blackie was just a complete imposter of an expert. However, being called such by someone made Blackie want to become an expert in God's domain even more. Blackie, beautifully done. Shifang stretched out a thumbs up, quietly praising Blackie. Shifang never imagined Blackie would tame the Tyrant Bear just like that. The Tyrant Bear had also called Blackie a big brother with a face full of respect. Blackie suddenly became confused. He did not understand what he had done that was worth being praised by Shifang. However, he was still very happy. At least he had done something for Shifang, although he didn't know what he had done exactly. Over 10 minutes later, Shifang finally gathered 6 players. They could start dungeon diving now. Chapter 24 Hell's Roar. Although Shifang's party was gathered, the observing level 2 players had started laughing. They were not laughing because all the players Shifang had invited were level 1. Instead, the jobs that were in the party were just too exotic. They couldn't help but laugh out loud. This noob really is something, and even I am starting to admire him. They're simply a suicide party. I really pity that expert for actually bringing along such an exotic player. The expert had even agreed to let him be the party's leader. The queued up level 2 players started a debate, and there were quite a few players who were holding their stomachs while laughing loudly. He is just playing to the gallery. Zhao Yueru wrinkled her brows slightly. She turned her head away after taking a look at Shifang, her heart slightly discomforted. Before, she would be the focus of everyone wherever she went. Today, however, everyone's attention was on an inconspicuous noob like Shifang. Although everyone was jeering at him, he was still their focal point. Alright Yueru, we should hurry and gather enough people. If we waste any more time, we will be left behind by the frontline players. Although Gentle Snow felt that Shifang seemed to be an expert, regarding levels, methods of recruiting people and such, he was just too far from being referred to as an expert. As for the notion of inviting Shifang into their guild, it was no longer present now. Their Ouroboros only accepted experts. Got it. Zhao Yueru turned towards the swordsman in front of her. With a little vengeance, she directly said, Data's not bad, but too bad we don't want a swordsman. The swordsman suddenly became spiritless. How could he not see what Zhao Yueru meant? Subsequently, he turned his head and glared at the distant Shifang, his eyes filled with hatred. Meanwhile, Shifeng, who knew nothing about what has happened, was currently activating the Deathly Forest. System. Please select activation difficulty. System. Normal, hard, hell. Shifeng chose hell without hesitation. Suddenly, the transfer passage in front of the Deathly Forest changed. It changed from a silvery gray color to pitch black. At the same time, a flickering skull that had its mouth wide open could vaguely be seen. Meanwhile, the party members of Shifeng's party all received a notification. System. You have chosen hell mode of Deathly Forest. Death penalty increased by 100%. Suddenly, the faces of the members of the party turned deathly white. Death penalty increased by 100%. Doesn't that mean if they died within the dungeon, they would lose 20% of their express? 1 or 2 hours of effort were required to make up for that express. Brother Feng, you chose the wrong one. Aren't we going down the normal dungeon? Blackie hurriedly walked over and whispered a reminder. Nothing's wrong. It's hell mode. What would I be doing here if it isn't to dive hell mode? Shifeng snapped. The drop rate for forging designs was extremely low. If it was normal mode, then Werewolf Felt's drop rate was only 1%, hard mode had 5% and hell mode had 30%. Although normal mode could be cleared without limit every day, who would have so much time to do so? Meanwhile, hard mode could only be cleared 5 times a day, and the probability of the forging design to drop was also not great. As for hell mode, it could only be cleared once a day, but it was also the one that had the most hopes of dropping it. Feng, Brother Feng, what are you saying? Hell mode of the Deathly Forest. Just look at our party. It is problematic to even clear normal mode, not to mention hell mode. Blackie panicked. Before, he had already seen several elite parties that had returned after dying. According to what these people had said, the monsters in the Deathly Forest were extremely strong. Their intelligence was extremely high as well. It was impossible to beat them without reaching level 4 or 5, so they had all left after giving up. If they dove into a hell mode dungeon now, with noobs like them, that would truly be going down into hell. Relax. If I weren't certain, even I wouldn't do it. Shifeng clapped Blackie's shoulders, saying confidently with a smile. Alright, let's go inside then. Shifeng led the party by entering first, followed by Blackie. Lonely Snow had also entered with a dazed head. He was prepared to tread this path to the very end. As for the remaining 3, they hesitated for quite some time. We better go in. The expert has already gone inside, so what do we, level 1 noobs, still have to be reluctant for? Moreover, we're entering the hell mode of the Deathly Forest. Even mentioning it would be a glory, Cola encouraged. The other 2 felt that it made sense and had also followed into the dungeon. Meanwhile, the area in front of Gentle Snow's party was completely silent. All of the level 2 players were stunned. They were not just shocked, but thunderstruck. A level 2 elite party couldn't even clear the normal mode, yet a party that mainly consisted of level 1 players had actually chosen the hell mode of the Deathly Forest. Snow, did I see wrong? That's hell mode, right? Zhao Yueru asked. Gentle Snow nodded her head. Her beautiful eyes kept staring at the flickering skull. Her expression turned extremely serious. That fellow must have abandoned himself to despair, entering hell mode after determining that he couldn't clear the normal mode. We'll see how they come out dead in a moment. Zhao Yueru laughed. We don't have that sort of time. Let's go, we've gathered enough people. Gentle Snow led the way towards the Deathly Forest dungeon. She selected normal mode for the difficulty of the dungeon. If there were no problems with normal mode, they would enter hard mode after. Within the dungeon of the Deathly Forest, there was a dark and gloomy forest. From time to time, there would be a chill wind blowing, causing a shiver down one's body. Aside from Shifeng himself, every member of his party was tightly packed around the dungeon's entrance. They did not move even an inch for fear of attracting any monsters that would wipe their party. Brother Feng, why do I keep feeling a cold wind blowing by my back? Blackie asked in worry. Blackie, you need to bring out some temperament of an expert, only then will you have the possibility to become one. It is just hell mode. Aside from the monsters here having a little bit intelligence, their battle methods being a little bit complicated, and their attack, defense, and HP are a little bit higher, there isn't much else. Oh right, there is also a little bit more monsters here. After some thought, Shifeng felt that he had nothing more to add. Suddenly, every member of the party sent looks of disdain towards Shifeng. When diving a dungeon, even a small difference in attack and HP could cause a team wipe. As for Shifeng, he had just simply explained. Moreover, what did he mean by, just a little more intelligence? They had experience before the battles with monsters in God's domain. Regarding those monsters with slightly higher intelligence, even with the same attack and HP, their strength would still be increased by 1 or 2 folds. Alright, stop minding these little matters. I'll be explaining the strategy for this dungeon in a moment, so you guys better listen carefully. If you don't follow through, then your lives will become forfeit. Shifeng waved his hands, ready to start explaining the strategy to conquer the dungeon. Suddenly, a strong wind blew from the dark and gloomy forest, causing the trees to sway madly. Ow, ow, ow. After the howling wind came a furious roar that resounded throughout the entire Deathly Forest. Countless birds were scared, flying off into the sky. Blackie and the others were stunned by such an imposing aura. They were just youths around the age of 20. They had never experienced any great hardships, not to mention being tempered through life or death situations. It was their first time facing such a lung-piercing roar. Compared to hearing the traditional roar of a tiger in the forest, this roar was much more shocking to the human heart. This thing is what we should pay attention to, Shifeng calmly said at this moment. The largest difference between hell mode and hard mode was this roar. Although it did not have a specific name to it, the players in Shifeng's previous life had dubbed it as Hell's Roar. Chapter 25 Night Ranger. Shifeng's words confused the other members. Wasn't it just a roar? What was there to pay attention to? When Shifeng looked at everyone's contemptuous expressions, he couldn't help but gravely say, listen well you all. Hell's Roar is not as simple as what you think it is. In a moment, follow my demands while advancing. If anyone makes a mistake, don't blame me for immediately kicking you out of the party. Being lectured by Shifeng in such a way, the other members all became serious. Nobody wished to leave the party. In a moment, Cola and I will walk in front. Lonely Snow, you walk in the middle and protect the Oracle. Blackie, you and the summoner will walk at the back. Remember, you must not break formation regardless of any activities. Without my command, nobody is allowed to be the first to attack, do you all understand? Shifang explained the basics of formations once to the party. The reason Shifang had allowed the Guardian Knight, Cola, to walk in front was that he let Cola add all of his free ability points into endurance. His HP now reached 310 points. With this much HP, Cola could resist a little longer, sharing some of Shifang's burden. The dungeons in God's Domain were unlike the dungeons in other virtual reality games. The degree of freedom within the dungeon was high, and the dungeons, themselves, were very large. There were even quite a few player parties who had wandered around in the dungeon for hours without even meeting a single boss. Although the Deathly Forest was not as large, it was still possible to become lost within the dark and gloomy forest. If someone were to become lost, Shifang only wished to say, hee hee. The scary part of the Deathly Forest was that players could become lost once they entered the forest. Eventually, the players would mysteriously die one after another. In Shifang's previous life, there were countless players who had entered the forest and died over and over again in such a way without even meeting the shadow of a monster. If they had good luck and met a monster, then the result was a party wipe. Only after many experts of guilds had done it, did everyone finally understand the dreadfulness of the Deathly Forest. They had acknowledged that it was a terrifying dungeon that was impossible to clear without reaching level 5. When Shadow Guild reached level 5, they had organized hundreds of players to scout out the paths in the Deathly Forest. They had paid over hundreds of lives to finally have a clear understanding of the Deathly Forest's map. The entire Deathly Forest had 36 paths. However, only 3 of them led to the first boss, Willy. These 3 paths were paved with the lives of many players. 2 of these 3 paths were extremely dangerous. Without sufficient strength, death would be the only result. There was only one path that had very few monsters. Under Shifang's lead, everyone walked into the forest. The moment they entered the forest, everyone discovered that there were too many pathways through the forest. They did not know which one was the right path. However, Shifang had chosen one without hesitation. Everyone else closely followed him while being cautious of their surroundings. After walking for about 5 minutes, they met their first monster. Suddenly, everybody started to become tense. Don't act on impulse. Listen to my commands, Shifang loudly shouted. In front of them was only a level 2 elite monster, a night rabbit. However, due to the dungeon strengthening, its attack, defense, and HP were all greatly increased. Its HP was a whopping 700 points. Cola, you lure the monster over. Oracle, pay attention to healing. Everyone else, don't start the attack without my command, Shifang quickly gave out orders. The Guardian Knight, Cola gulped down a mouthful of saliva. He carefully walked towards the night rabbit's attack range. Everyone else was nervous to the extreme. Although this was only a level 2 elite, they were currently in the hell mode of a dungeon. However, everyone's nervousness was for naught. The moment the night rabbit with a person's height saw Cola, it immediately dashed over. Cola had very successfully lured the night rabbit over. Moreover, he did not panic when he lured it. He retreated while using his shield to block the night rabbit's attacks. However, even though every attack landed on the shield, the damage was still terrifying. Just a single hit dealt 42 damage. By the time Cola returned to the front of the party, his HP had already dropped by a third. The Oracle, whose name was Drowsy Sloth, had good awareness. He had given out healing the moment Cola entered his casting range. However, every heal could only add 24 HP to Cola. It was completely not enough to stop Cola's HP from falling. Brother Fong, are we still not attacking? Blackie was slightly nervous. At this moment, Cola's remaining HP did not even reach 1/3 of its total. Bringing an Oracle into a dungeon was just a complete mistake. Amongst the healer jobs, Oracles had the weakest healing abilities. However, since Shifang had chosen so, Blackie could only acknowledge it. Now that their MT was close to death, it would be unacceptable if they still did not attack. Hold on, Shifang resolutely said. Time passed bit by bit. Cola continuously used his shield to block the claw attacks of the night rabbit, whereas his HP continuously decreased. Cola only had 20% HP remaining, yet Shifang had yet to give out the command to attack. Just when everyone thought that Shifang wanted to give up on Cola, a flying arrow pierced through the forest, shooting directly for the party's Oracle, Drowsy Sloth. Lonely Snow had not reacted at all as Drowsy Sloth was struck directly on his chest. A very great damage of -123 points appeared. At this moment, Shifang shouted, Sloth, use life payment. Use the damage you received to heal Cola. Blackie, hold back the night rabbit to let Cola recover. Lonely, come with me. Everyone else attacks the night rabbit. Oracles were indeed the weakest regarding healing. However, Oracles had high HP. They would not be easily one-shotted. Also, Oracles had 2 skills when they first start out. One was Life Prayer, while the other was Life Payment. Life Payment could turn the damage received by the user into a heal to be used on other players. In the early periods of the game, healers did not possess many skills or equipment. In regards to such a situation, Oracles had a greater advantage over other healers when entering the Deathly Forest. It was the reason why Shifang had given up on choosing a priest over an Oracle. After finishing his piece, Shifang rushed into the forest. Do you think I will let you run away? Shifang coldly said as he looked at the dark shadow running through the forest. Wind Blade, Shifang turned into a phantom, chasing directly forward. The reason why Shifang did not let anyone attack the night rabbit was to use Cola as bait. Shifang wanted to lure out the dark hand hiding behind the scenes. Although the night rabbit looked terrifying, an elite party could face up to 2 or 3 of them at once without any problems. However, in Shifang's previous life, the reason why even a level 5 elite party could be party wiped was that of the dark shadow in front of Shifang. This dark shadow used the night rabbit as bait, luring players into attacking it. The dark shadow, on the other hand, would ambush the healers from behind. As the night rabbit was occupying everyone else, there was no way to save the healer. In the end, everyone died. Inside the Deathly Forest, if players did not deal with this fellow, the result would be a party wipe. With the increased movement speed from Wind Blade, Shifang quickly caught up to the dark shadow. Shifang waved out 3 sword slashes, sealing the dark shadow's path of advance. The black shadow knew that it could not escape. It immediately turned around, unsheathing a pair of knives to block Shifang's attack. Dang, dang, dang. With the abyssal blade, Shifang's strength was frighteningly high. His attacks caused the dark shadow to take 3 steps back, and each step it retreated would be followed by the damage that was over -10. In the end, the dark shadow revealed its figure under the moonlight. Night Ranger, Special Elite. Level 2. HP 1458-1500. Seeing the Night Ranger being repelled, Shifang immediately used Abyssal Bind without giving him a chance. 9 pitch black chains appeared to bind the Night Ranger, preventing him from moving for 3 seconds, and his defense reduced by 100%. Thundering Flash. Chop. Damages of -81, -98, -119, -124 appeared. When the 2 skills landed, a frightening amount of damage appeared, taking away a quarter of the Night Ranger's HP. No matter how capable the Night Ranger was, it could not break free from the binding of the 9 chains. He could only silently take a beating for 3 whole seconds. Shifang was unrestrained as he sent out sword slash after sword slash, piercing through the vital point on the Night Ranger's chest. By the time the Night Ranger broke free from the bindings, his remaining HP did not exceed 700 points. Wretched human, the Night Ranger was enraged. He brandished his twin blades like a gale, engulfing Shifang. At this moment, Lonely Snow finally caught up. A charge from him had caused the Night Ranger to enter a fainted state, at the same time breaking the Night Ranger's gale-like blade. Shifang took the chance to slash at the Night Ranger's neck. Lonely Snow also brandished his large axe at the Night Ranger. By the time the Night Ranger had awoken, he only had a remnant of his HP left. The Night Ranger abruptly hacked his twin blades towards Lonely Snow, sending him flying backward and dealing 64 damage. The Night Ranger turned his head to stare at Shifang, once more brandishing his twin blades and slashing horizontally towards Shifang's neck. Dang, Shifang used parry with his sword. Without giving the Night Ranger any chances to retaliate, Shifang lifted up the Ranger and tossed him back. Then, Shifang followed up with a couple of sword strikes, finishing off the Night Ranger. Shifang conveniently picked up the 2 items that dropped, then immediately ran towards Cola's location to provide help. Laying by the side, Lonely Snow became dumbfounded after seeing Shifang's agile skills. His heart filled with shock, Lonely Snow had even forgotten to follow Shifang to support. There was such a way even to kill monsters. Chapter 26 Miraculous Technique. By the time Shifang returned to the party, the elite Night Rabbit only had 1/3 of its HP remaining. Everyone had coordinated properly. Cola tanked in the front alone, while the others vigorously dealt damage. However, to control aggro, Blackie did not madly deal damage. Instead, he used Evil Whip to pin down the Night Rabbit, giving Cola some breathing space. Cola's performance was also very good. He steadily tanked the monster, and he also had good control over aggro. Cola was not at the level of a novice, but there was still a long road ahead before he became an expert. Cola, don't always try to block with your shield. It isn't a must to block an attack like the other virtual reality games. You can also dodge to avoid an attack. That way, you could reduce the stress on the healer. For everyone else, focus your attacks on the target. Don't just randomly attack, aim your attacks at the wild rabbit's claws or other weak points. That way, you can reduce a lot of burden on the MT. Shifang did not directly go up to help Cola, but instead, he taught everyone how to battle against monsters. If everyone battled while regarding God's domain as a traditional game, the results would be disastrous. This was because the healing given out was usually far from being able to keep up with the damage received. Some parties would bring an extra healer. However, this would result in the damage being insufficient. The result was still a party wipe. Players only slowly got used to the combat style in God's domain several months after the game opened. The players then would no longer be as cute and simple as they were now. Shifang wanted to cultivate everyone to build a foundation for his future workshop. So naturally, he needed to let these people learn the combat styles of God's domain earlier. Everyone thought Shifang was also a noob, so they held slight dissatisfaction within their hearts. The expert did not say anything, so why was a noob like him giving out commands? However, Shifang's words made sense, so they still consciously did as Shifang said. Cola had also started to change his battle style. He was no longer using his shield to block the attacks rigidly. Instead, he retreated a step back when the wild rabbit launched its attack, taking the chance to avoid it. Although Cola still needed to use his shield to block most of the time, it had still greatly reduced the burden on the healer. Such a change allowed killing the Night Rabbit to become even easier. The few level 1 noobs were also slightly surprised. There was some change in their opinions towards Shifang. Shifang was not as unbearable as they had imagined him to be. Shifang only smiled at this situation. He did not mind their thoughts at all. Shifang only felt that Cola was quite good after seeing his performance. Although Cola was a first-rate expert 10 years later, he currently was still far from that point. If it were an expert MT, they would not retreat, but choose to dodge the attack without even moving. Such a decision was because if the MT moved, the monster would move as well. This situation would cause trouble for long-range damage dealers, which would result in the loss of a lot of damage. However, such a technique required a bounty of experience in battle and a body with dexterous reactions. Cola still needed a lot of training. The elite Night Rabbit fell within a moment. It dropped a skill book for Berserkers, Whirlwind Slash. It also dropped 3 coppers. Everyone could not help but be amazed by the drop rate of Hell Mode. A skill book dropped just after they killed an elite monster. If they killed over 10 elite monsters, then wouldn't they be able to obtain over 10 skill books? It should be known that skill books were extremely rare, and even a common skill could sell for 1 silver. Shifang naturally knew of their thoughts. However, not even Hell Mode had that high of a drop rate. It was only 3 to 4 times that of Hard Mode. Afterward, Shifang passed Whirlwind Slash to the stupefied Lonely Snow, then he passed a level 1 bronze defensive plate armor to Cola. The Night Ranger dropped the armor. With these items, the party's strength slightly increased. Cola's mouth could not close after receiving the defensive plate armor. He hurriedly thanked Shifang for it. With this bronze plate armor, not only had Cola's defense increased by 14 points, but his HP had also become 350 points. Aside from Shifang and Blackie, everyone else on the scene was filled with envy. Bronze equipment was the identification of an expert. Outside the dungeon, it was impossible to obtain a piece of bronze equipment, even if you begged for it. And this piece of equipment was obtained by Shifang, alone. Yet, Shifang gave it to Kola without hesitation. Everyone's opinion towards Shifang changed quite a bit. They felt such a party leader was not bad at all. Shifang was unlike the other party leaders who would prioritize themselves when equipment dropped. As for bronze equipment, forget giving it away to a temporary party member, they would definitely keep it for themselves. Afterward, everyone followed Shifang as they advanced. Although the dark and gloomy forest was scary, everyone was no longer as nervous as they were before going through a stimulating fight. From time to time, one or two patrolling elite night rabbits would appear in front of them, and they would also respond to it quickly. When there were two night rabbits, Kola would tank one of them, while Shifang and Lonely Snow would rush over and kill the other. As for the ranged players, they would prioritize attacking the night rabbit in front of Shifang. The night rabbit's 700 HP would be gone quickly under the fierce bombardment. Afterward, the party supported Kola and finished off the other night rabbit. Within moments, two night rabbits were no more. With this process, a skill book, restored meant for healers also dropped. The skill had a 2-second cast time. When learned by oracles, the skill could instantly restore 37 HP. It was far better than Life Prayer. It did not share the same cooldown as Life Prayer, so the two could be used in coordination to negate the damage caused by the elite night rabbits completely. Drowsy Sloth continuously thanked Shifang and the other party members for letting him learn the skill book. Restore was an extremely important skill for conquering dungeons. If it were to be sold outside, it could go for at least 2 or 3 silver coins. Don't mind it. Skill books are meant to be used. Let's continue onward. Shifang smiled as he answered. Aside from AoE attack skill books, healer class skill books were the most expensive and rare. However, the Deathly Forest was a dungeon meant to let players build up their foundation in God's domain. In Hell mode, the drop rate for basic healing skills was very high. In Shifang's previous life, he had obtained 4 healing skill books just after entering Hell mode of the Deathly Forest once. It was not considered valuable. After more than an hour, Shifang's party arrived at a flat grassland. They had finally met the first boss of the dungeon. Willy Chieftain rank, level 3, HP 6000. Willy was a ferocious night rabbit. Its height was as tall as 2 people, and sharp steel claws decorated its paws. These claws loved creating a feast of fresh blood, and those caught by it would be ripped to shreds, turned into a river of blood. It was unknown how many players had died a gruesome death under these claws. A short distance away from Willy, there were 7 elite night rabbits on guard. These 7 rabbits were very close to each other. As long as one of them was attacked, the other wild rabbits would rush over as well. There was also a great possibility of attracting the boss. Even if it were Shifang, he would not be able to face off against 7 night rabbits, not to mention including a boss. However, if they did not finish off the 7 night rabbits, there was no way for them to attack the boss. Brother Fong, what should we do now? This place has too many night rabbits. The game isn't giving us any chances. Blackie was very anxious. Although the boss was in front of them, the system had dealt them such a hand. This difficulty was just too great. No wonder it was a hell mode dungeon. It was impossible to pass through without absolute strength. The system setting also angered everyone. Who could fend off 7 elite night rabbits? Even a level 5 guardian knight would not be able to do it. You all wait for me behind that rock. Kola, get ready to receive the monster. Everyone else is not allowed to attack without my command. Shifang pointed towards a large rock nearby. Shifang naturally knew that there were 7 elite night rabbits here. Everyone abided by Shifang's command without question. All the monsters they had killed on the way here relied on Shifang's commands for success. They killed quite a lot of night rabbits, and everyone had obtained 1 or 2 pieces of bronze equipment. Blackie even had 5 pieces of bronze equipment. Their party's strength has definitely surpassed the other elite parties. The credit for such an achievement belonged to Shifang's commands. As for Shifang, he had run to a location that was 40 yards away from the 7 night rabbits. He quietly hid within the bushes, observing the night rabbits' every movement. Everyone understood that Shifang was trying to lure monsters. However, the 7 night rabbits were too close to each other. Shifang was a swordsman. He did not possess any long-range attacking capabilities, so how could he lure monsters? Time passed bit by bit. Everyone was extremely anxious. If Shifang accidentally failed, then it would be a party wipe. However, Shifang was calm. He moved not an inch as he watched the faraway night rabbits. At this moment, a cool breeze blew past. A dead leaf on the trees was sent flying over. Seeing the dead leaf hovering down towards the night rabbit, Shifang picked up a small stone beside him. Gently, he tossed the stone over. The direction the stone flew to was towards the night rabbit closest to the boss. We're finished. Everyone understood what kind of outcome this would be. It would definitely be a combination of 1 boss and 7 night rabbits rushing towards them, turning them into blood sacrifices. The moment the stone was about to hit the night rabbit, the dead leaf just happened to have blocked between the stone and the night rabbit. The stone struck the dead leaf, smashing it onto the night rabbit. The night rabbit abruptly turned to look at its surroundings, only discovering a leaf. However, how could a leaf hitting it be so painful? Subsequently, the night rabbit left its unit to observe the surroundings. It looked around aimlessly, not knowing what it was trying to find. It had unknowingly moved over 20 yards away from its unit, and it was still moving further and further away. Too godly. Lonely Snow could not help but exclaim. His eyes had nearly popped out of their sockets. Everyone else had dumbly nodded as well. What kind of accurate judgment and aim was required to hit the dead leaf while hitting the night rabbit, and thereby confusing the night rabbit's hatred, causing it to look for its target blindly? Even calling it as an ultimate skill was not excessive. Was Shifang really a noob? He couldn't be some gaming god here to make a fool of them, right? Summoner, the rest is up to you. Shifang walked to the rock's location. He looked at the summoner, clapping the person's shoulders as he spoke, smiling. Chapter 27 Shifang's Improved Party. Hearing Shifang's comment, the summoner, Gluttonous Mouse suddenly panicked. He did not understand what Shifang wanted him to do. If he had performed badly and was kicked from the party as a result, he would regret it until he died. It was hard to find a good party during this time, not to mention a party with an expert leading it. It was impossible to join such a party, even if you begged. Relax, I won't let you do anything dangerous. You just have to summon out a flame sprite and follow my instructions. You don't have to do anything else, Shifeng said with a smile, trying to ease the nerves of gluttonous Mouse a little. Currently, summoners were not strong, mainly due to the incapability of their skills. A summoner's method of attack mainly relied on their summoned creatures, whereas their normal attack was the low-damage magic bullet. However, a summoner with awesome skills could become a one-man army. It was especially true for summoners who could call out powerful elemental creatures. They could kill elite monsters as if they were just playing around. Party leader, rest assured, I'll definitely do it, Gluttonous Mouse loudly said, his tone filled with respect. He was like a student who had met his teacher. Everyone else, distance yourselves from that rock, 20 yards away from it would be the best. Pay attention not to lure the other monsters. Shifeng turned around and said to the other party members. Yes, party leader, the other party members loudly replied. Their current attitudes were completely different from before. Shifeng was slightly shocked by everyone's performance. Why was each and every one of them so obedient all of a sudden? However, Shifeng did not know that the single stone he threw just now had completely shocked every one of them. They were filled with admiration towards Shifeng's stone-throwing technique. Such skill and accuracy were definitely not something a normal person could do. Professional players might not even be able to do so. Worshipping the strong was a common sight within a game. These level 1 noobs were no exception. At this moment, the gaze everyone used to look at Shifeng was completely different. Before, they merely felt that Shifeng was a good commander. Now, however, Shifeng was a strong person they worshipped. They had faintly grown a sense of reverence for Shifeng. Standing to the side, Blackie clapped Lonely Snow's shoulders, proudly saying, "How is it? Following Brother Feng isn't bad, right?" Lonely Snow silently nodded his head, rejoicing for the decision he made to follow after Shifeng. Shifeng was definitely a beta tester expert. Without sufficient experience and practice, such techniques were impossible to accomplish. Only a beta tester could possibly do it. Ha ha ha, what do you plan to do in the future? Blackie suddenly asked. He started to hatch ideas towards Lonely Snow. Blackie wanted to poach Lonely Snow for their workshop, even though the workshop was still non-existent. There was a 100% chance for Cola to join them, but Lonely Snow still did not have any plans to move in such a direction. The future, Lonely Snow had never considered it before. He was but an average player. He did not have any big ambitions, only wanting to earn some cash from playing games. He said honestly, I have never considered it before. I see that your techniques are quite good. Why don't you join us for now? Blackie nonchalantly asked.